delighted that we have Jill Walker's support. Thank you, Jill. My name is Caitlin Ryan. Again, here at the Cannabis Alliance, we're dedicated to the advancement of a vital, ethical, equitable, and sustainable cannabis industry. Lada, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Let us know where you bud tend and a little bit about what you do in the industry.
Hey everybody, I'm Lada Brathwaite. I budtend at Urban Elements in Lake City Way at the time, but I started in Edmonds probably about 2 years ago. So it's been 3 years in the game as a budtender, and I also run a cannabis lifestyle business called the Bakersman Collective. What was the other question, Jill?
I think that was it. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the Bakersman Collective?
Oh, it's a cannabis lifestyle brand where we curate cannabis focused content and events. So we are set to spread the message of quality conversations from functional potheads out there.
Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you. And then do you have any events coming up that you want to tell us about?
We do. We have Baked and Blessed for that will be the weekend of July 15th. So the 14th is a icebreaker event, and the 16th is a private venue, but our all-day event is on the 15th from 1 to 8 p.m. in Whatcom County. And more information can be found on thebakersman.com.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And we'll get that link in the chat too, so that it's an easy click for folks. And then Don, why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is Don Guzman. I'm a bud tender in Bellevue, Washington at Higher Leaf in Eastgate. I'm a medical cannabis consultant, and I'm also a medical cannabis patient. And I've been working in the business for the last 3.5, almost 4 years. And I'm happy to be at the counter every day, even though it's, it can be a grind. I'm just always happy to be helping people out. It's, in my opinion, cannabis isn't just for stoners. It's for people trying to get wellness.
Absolutely. And beyond being a bud tender, you also have your medical endorsement, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fantastic. So I think easy to start. I'm kind of curious. Burl and I were in Washington, D.C. a couple weeks ago working on safe banking. And I think one of the things we talk a lot about, at least on the policy side of things, is safety, retail safety. And I'm kind of curious from your perspective, do you feel, last year we had a big rash of armed robberies. Do you feel that came out of the blue, or do you think that was sort of an intensifying of something that's always been an issue? And how do you feel things are now? In other words, the short version of this question is, how safe do you feel at work?
Wow. Personally, my safety at work, I feel generally safe. We since all the robberies happened, we put in some extra safety measures, which then goes into the function of what's happening on the floor. So now we have a door person that buzzes people in. And that's one of their primary jobs, other than greeting people, making sure that they're kind of flowing through the store properly. But, just that one added level of safety as far as buzzing someone in instead of having an open door policy, it has made things feel a lot safer.
That's a complicated question, but I would say the location of my dispensary and its parking lot situation inherently makes it safe. You're having a hard time getting out and you're on a main road. So we didn't experience any robberies during that string, while everyone else around us did, just because of the parking lots. And then, do I feel safe at work? I work day shifts, so I think less of the issues happen during those times. But I think Washington as an industry, overall, we need to upgrade our security systems. And some dispensaries did, not all of them have. And I don't think that those requirements are there, like California, where you have armed guards, where you have that double security where you go through the front and you got to get buzzed into the back. That's kind of standard if you go to the dispensaries down there. So I think we could just improve overall. The rise, I attribute it to the fact that it became the talking point for all the news articles. So like robberies were always there. I think crime is always there. However, people seeing dispensaries as a target, the more we started talking about this issue, I think the more popular it came, and it reached kind of a bubble and has subsided a little bit since then. So
yeah. Yeah, we talked about here's some concern, like you said, when the media started talking about it. We had some folks not from our organization, because we were very careful about the talking points that we made sure we put out there, but folks trying, sort of calling attention to the amount of cash that was in stores, and might have been selling a narrative that made things even less safe potentially. And I will take this opportunity to say that most stores have, while there is cash, most stores have a regular deposit schedule, and there is actually not a lot of cash accumulating at stores, and that's just to make that clear. However, I think, yeah, to push things like safe banking, and there was sort of a picture being painted that there was mounds of cash being accumulated, and every time we heard that message being put down, we, hey folks, but you gotta keep our people safe by making sure it's clear that cash is not actually sitting there so much. Well, thanks. I actually spent the morning this morning. We've got an event coming up on Tuesday, Frisbee golf, and I spent the morning visiting retail shops and talking with budtenders. And that safe banking was like the number one thing folks wanted to talk to me about, not just for safety at work, but also things like getting a home loan. If your paycheck comes from a business that touches plants, there are a lot of banks that won't even let you have a checking account, won't, home improvement, buying a house, a car loan, all of those things become not an option just because that's where you get your paycheck from. Other than safe banking, I'm kind of curious from a policy perspective, what sorts of things are you all interested in seeing happen? Is there additional support specifically to budtenders, or you're the ones that interact with consumers the most, things that you hear consumers being worried about? Yes, Don.
Boy, concerns from, when the robberies were happening, often we had a lot of concerned customers. At our store, the one that I work at, most of our customers are, pretty kind as far as closing the door quickly behind them. They know that we're trying to protect their medicine. So, I don't see customers having fear of that type of situation on the robbery side. I think the customer's main focus is getting the products they're coming in to getting out within a reasonable amount of time, and just kind of having a natural flow to their day.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a legislative action that can be taken necessarily. I think if there was magically, right, because the cost of having armed security outside of your business is pretty high. That's where I think it would be more so grant based, like give us access to the money that you're taxing us off of to be able to fund back into providing security for these businesses. Because now you're asking a small business to add another employee or a service. And I'm not saying that it's not possible, but it may not have been built into the original budget of maintaining the operation of their business at this time. And armed security is expensive.
Yeah. And the insurance that goes with it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So like help them out, especially if we're granting, say, like our new social equity applicants, retail licenses, getting them in here, like this is some support that you could provide to them as a business, because they're the newbies on the block, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And Burl is joining us. He's the executive director here at the Cannabis Alliance. And we're starting to talk about a retail safety bill and actually licensee safety in general, looking for some tax rebates or some relief for folks who are making security measures. And I know, I believe in California, that's how some of those stores met those regulations, was through some support from the state. And we should be doing that here as well.
Well, it seems like when we ended up hiring security at some of our locations, right? Mm-hmm. And we would like to have safe banking, but the situation is right now is if we were to, I know there's some shops that are using taps or using there's a get around a of doing cash, but that costs something, and it's either got to be passed on the consumer or the business is going to take the hit. So our business took the hit with security, but they also put one less person on the floor every single shift, making it more difficult to process customers through and grind through your day, because now you're working 25-30% harder. So it gets spread out. It would be nice if we had some of our taxes be able to take care of some of that area, instead of putting the onus on either the floor employee or the business.
Interesting. Well, I want to rewind back a couple of years to pandemic and ask you both, because you were both, I believe, budtending at the time, what it felt like when budtenders were deemed essential workers here in Washington State. Did that have an impact on you at all? I mean, we've all been around since before adult use was legal, to then go from, 10 years ago at the time, mostly illegal endeavor, to being called an essential worker. Did that have an impact on you? Was it an eye roll? What was that experience like?
Personally, the experience for me was I felt like that I was in a position of helping people. So it gave me that feeling of, kind of being as a qualified human being at the counter, and it was great to be working with people again.
I mean, like, reading the words, I felt great. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it was just like, oh, okay, cool. You actually see us. But what that really translated to in my experience was just more consistent work. We never closed, right, during the pandemic. And dispensaries don't close anyway. But we have our operational hours, but we work 7 days a week. Now, that provided support to a very stressed community, and I'm grateful for that. But that meant that we operated through half of our staff coming down with COVID. We operated through just things that you would love to be able to close your business for one day, and take a break. Or, like, we were short-staffed enough that we needed to show up for work. I felt obligated to not miss a shift, or if I missed a shift, I felt guilty because business kept coming, and now my staff is we're short-staffed. Like, now my crew's missing, and they're working extra hard. So what I saw is that, nurses, doctors deemed essential workers, like, they received applause. They maybe received bonuses. Their grocery stores, they got bonuses during that operational time. That wasn't present in the cannabis industry. We made our hourly wage, and then hopefully, which did happen, we were tipped more because that government card actually worked in the dispensaries that took cards. So the spending at that time was just astronomical, and the tipping felt great. But I think in the long run, we weren't appreciated as much as our paychecks would have liked to see it,
Fair enough. And I was going to save this towards the end after we'd warmed up a little bit more, but that actually feels like a really good lead in to unionizing. I warned you both we were going to talk about it a little bit. While we were in Washington, D.C., we met with the national, some of our representatives met with the national chapter of UFCW. And here in Washington State, UFCW has been in the forefront of unionization. It's tricky because a lot of folks who are in the ownership position, we work with a lot of those folks, 100% believe in unions, think that everything should be unionized, and right, opposite things can be true at the same time, and are struggling as brand new businesses, as small businesses, and had sort of hoped there would be a period of investment where we could all get our legs under us, and as businesses mature and get larger, move towards unionization. And reasonably on the other side, on the unionizing side, says, no, we unionize now at the beginning, when we can actually have an impact on how these businesses are run. I'm sort of curious what your perspectives are on that, if you want to talk.
Yeah, I'm comfortable talking about unions. I've been in a union. I was with Boeing with 751 for a dozen years, and I never minded paying my union dues. I knew they were going through, going to produce fruit basically, and protect jobs, protect your safety, um, all things going into the unions. I'm for. Right now, the way that the structure is, it's really easy to dump somebody off of staff. It's really easy to, just we don't even sometimes hear about why somebody's gone at our store. And our stores, I think all four of our stores are run really well. But that a little bit of union assistance for, potentially making sure things are, the shops are all staffed properly, and you don't have the overworked employee that, it's kind of strange. We're the counter work that we do is not just cash registering. We're helping make decisions for people, or helping guide people in decision making that is trying to get them to wellness. So when we're in a speed type of situation where you just, you need to kind of move the line because you don't have enough employees to keep moving the line, it's an awkward situation to be in.
Yeah, it's awkward and uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
in the shop. But my experience with unions, I tried to start one of the first veterinary unions out here in Washington when I was a vet tech at a specialty and emergency hospital. And I saw the extreme efforts corporations go to lobby against unions. And what that inherently mean was the location that I worked at eventually closed. They worked so hard at, like, our union passed, we voted, we got it all in, and that shop, that veterinary hospital is not even open anymore because they just decided to cut losses of that space. So, and then I worked for the city of Seattle, which has its own union. And I mean, it's a year-long probationary period before you're tied into the union. But the benefits, that meant that I knew yearly I was going to have a pay raise, and what my pay scales were and where it capped out at. And that is something that we don't have in dispensaries or in the cannabis industry at this point in time. You're like, do you guys do raises? You start asking questions like, how's this look like? What's a 3-month evaluation look like here at this business? But I think unionization, from what I've seen, it works well in larger corporations. And when we're looking at businesses in the cannabis industry, or at least say dispensaries specifically, most of them have under 45 employees, right? Like under 50 employees. Now, knowing how many employees a business has matters in the terms of employment law. Right. So, like, you won't need a union if you know how to enforce employment law, if you know the rules that govern them. But again, those employment laws are based off of how many employees this business has. So if you're under 50, you can't technically get FMLA. And then even if you're smaller, they can discriminate based off of religious reasons. Like, that is all perfectly legal. Now, this is an understanding that individuals in our industry don't necessarily have. So they don't know how to fight for their rights. So having a union there to kind of be the collective voice to fight for us is amazing. But I just don't know, in a business that has 15 employees, what does unionization really look like there, right? So we need to kind of target the more larger businesses, the dispensaries that own 8 to 13, that have a large number of employees, 100 or more of budtenders. And that is a good place to start with unionization, because we've seen the negative effects where the small business owner decided, this is enough, I'm just going to sell my cannabis license. And now, yeah, you get a severance, but now you're no longer in the cannabis industry because you don't have a job there. Now you're looking for a new job, right? So I just think that unionization would work or wouldn't be necessary if we treated employees fairly and if employees actually knew what their rights were.
Yeah, well said, especially at the end. Yeah, don't be a jerk. which in fairness is hard, and sometimes people need to be held accountable to not be jerks. And I think in a lot of ways that's one of the benefits of unionizing happening at those larger places, because then there's at least a clearinghouse and a potential resource for employees of those smaller businesses where maybe a union at that location doesn't make a lot of sense, but they know where they can go if they need some assistance with employment law or to be pointed in the right direction, if something has happened where they need support beyond what you can Google, right? And yeah.
Or if like, I mean, I'm not quite sure what unionization looks like, but if there could just be like budtenders, where a place that maybe not just tied to the business, but a policy that we could apply for, because we want health insurance.
Mm-hmm.
We want, like, I just wish that there was a group wide, instead of just targeting one business and that one staff, to connect us all, because we're all doing the same thing. We're all experiencing a lot of the same struggles.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that's why it's important to talk about it, even if it can get a little prickly sometimes, because we don't come to solutions if we keep pretending like it's not a thing, right? And so coming up with ideas like, maybe it's not an official union, but, some way for budtenders to get together and just pool resources. And then that becomes a platform on down the road as the industry matures and more unionization becomes a probability in some businesses. Yeah, Goose, it looked like you had a thought there. Oh, I think you're on mute still.
So, Caitlin, one of the things, how is Have a Heart being involved? I believe they're with the grocery union. How is that playing out for them? Have you gotten any feedback from Have a Heart?
I actually don't have a lot of feedback from Have a Heart, other than it's working for them. They are one of those ones that have quite a few locations across several states. And Have a Heart, I believe, ended up unionized because of activity in California, and then that spread to all of their stores. And it's so far working out for them. So maybe a good model for us to continue to follow moving forward.
Yeah, because like anywhere within the union, if you could end up with, having employee retention's huge, because like at our shops, when we lose somebody, if we do hire somebody in their space, unless they're a very experienced bud tender, then it's always a drain on everybody else in the shop, because everybody's kind of having to help that person. And that's great. I came in with very little experience. I had to sink or swim, and I chose to swim. It wasn't easy, but I feel for anybody that comes into a shop that has very little experience.
Yeah, go ahead, Lotta.
I was going to say, me too, but I think that's also on the shop, like not having a dedicated trainer, not having a dedicated training process, and as an industry, we've been impacted with the loss of Top Tender as a company out here that was providing training. They are kaput. So there's this void of getting, individuals that are interested in this industry actually prepared to be a part of this industry, and a lack of planning as a whole. So we're overburdened trying to do way too many jobs. Like that should be, we got a new hire, okay, assistant manager or someone, a lead is going to be training this person and providing them what they need until they're no longer a fledgling and can fly. But that doesn't happen in these shops. And so like, is that something a union can fix, or is that something that you can fix by like really assessing how you want your operation to run?
Yeah. Yeah. And actually here at the Alliance, we are working towards having better education available. We think we do a decent job on our YouTube channel with these webinar Wednesdays. But we are working towards getting a little bit more targeted so that stores have a resource. Top Tender was a great resource, and it's a bummer. We were hoping to partner with them just as things were sort of ending there. And this brings me into the next set of questions I wanted to talk to you all about, and that's things like education. I know it. In terms of that sort of administrative support that you were talking about, Lotta, varies wildly, depending on which shop you're associated with. Some have their own very complete education process and training and all of that. And others, it's, here's the code to the POS and good luck. You know weed, right? Go. And that can be really challenging. And I know, because I love to go into stores and just talk to budtenders and hear what's going on, and the amount of education that I get back from folks. Also people who are experts and reliable, like the two of you, and then other times where it's just, oh, that's fire, you should try that. And which sometimes yields great recommendations, sometimes not so much. I was recently speaking with someone from BDSA, and I am going to completely forget what that acronym. They do market analysis. Pearl, do you know what is BDSA? You look like you had the thought there for a second.
Yeah, I did. I know it, and I did, and then you're forgetting it. Lost it out of my mind.
So sorry. If you Google BDSA, though, you will find them immediately. And we were talking about what consumers rely on, and Budtender recommendation is the number one thing that consumers rely on in order to make a purchase. So when you are asked, what do you recommend? I would love to hear from the two of you. And I imagine it's going to be different. So I'm excited to hear. When someone says, what do you recommend? What's your process in figuring out how to give them a good recommendation? Lotta, do you want to go first this time?
Yeah, for sure. I start asking questions back immediately, like, whoa, that's way too much pressure. So, like, why are you, like, what's your purpose for consuming? What are you getting into today? That gives me, like, if I'm at my first job, we had 100-foot wall of weed. So that narrows down, like, okay, you either smoke or you don't. And then if you don't, I'm on these products and trying to get you an experience. And then one of my other questions is your budget. I think I can absolutely give recommendations, but if I start recommending something out of your price range, then it doesn't matter what I say at that point. So I get them to give me a little bit more information, and then I bring out at least 3 options, varying degrees, some a little bit above the price point, some a little bit below, and some right on the money, but all within the experience that they're looking to have. But that's usually my tactic. And personally, if they really want to know what I smoke, it's usually a sativa dominant hybrid,
And that's what I was going to ask, is how often do you share like what you like?
It depends on my relationship with the consumer, because a lot of the time that putting it back on the budtender, I find that I've been calling them zombies, but there are people that just like, they don't, by the time they get to us in the shop, they just need some support and they don't actually want to make a decision at all. So no matter how many questions you ask them back, they're just wanting you to give them an answer so they don't have to decide that much. And so that's usually when I'll grab something that I know I like, that's like not overly expensive, choice wise. But yeah. I have to know the customer.
Okay. I have some follow-ups to that, but before we get too far off track, Goose, I'll let you give your answer to that question.
Yeah, when immediately when somebody comes to my counter, if I know them, then I already know what arena they're in. I know their edibles, I kind of know where they're flowing when they're regular customers. When a new customer comes in, one of the first things I'll get into is, okay, what are you looking to achieve? Where, what are you going to be doing? I get a little bit of information. Then we get into the types of products they're looking for. Generally, when I'm talking with people, if they're of a certain age, I don't like using ageisms, but I do like to start talking about the minor cannabinoids. Like, are you interested in, do you have any pain? Are there any things that you have right now that you would like to attempt to try to work with? And same thing with Lotta said, I'll say, do you have a price window from low to high? Where do you want to be? Because when we've got the opportunity of knowing products, we can go get a product that will, let's say if it's just flour, we can go get flour that might be under mid-level pricing, but its action and taste is upper level. Basically the balance is good. if we have something that, somebody's getting a what seems to be a better product or a better direction at a lesser price, I'm always glad to grab somebody a product like that.
Awesome. So I am curious, so many follow-up questions actually. So I'm kind of curious, when I was in high school, I worked at a marble slab, which is like a cold stone, right? And one of the things they talked to us about in training was this decision paralysis, because when you're in one of those shops, you have to choose the base ice cream, then you have to choose your mix-ins, then by the time you get to what kind of cone do you want, folks are angry. Like they're like, I just want some ice cream. And I imagine, especially if it's somebody's first or second time into a dispensary and you look at that wall of products, and it is really overwhelming. Do you feel, sorry, there's so much preamble to this question. We also know that everybody's endocannabinoid system is very different. What works for me doesn't work for the person next to me. And it took me a long time of smoking the wrong weed at a party that then makes me feel like I got to go home immediately to realize, oh, I can't just take, when somebody says, oh, this is fire, here, have some, I have to ask more questions if I'm going to remain social. Do you find, is there a product that you feel you can always reliably recommend to somebody? Like when you get that zombie and they come in and they're just like, they can't answer a lot of questions, they just would really like to get something and walk out the door. Does that exist?
Well, it depends what category they're looking into. But if somebody's at my counter and asks me for sleep, I have most of the minor cannabinoids behind me on the wall that I work at. I'm right in that zone, and I just reach behind me, put something on the counter, and I'm like, okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about why this is going to provide you what you're looking for. And it can be that way with most every product in the store. It can be that way with edibles. For us, I think as budtenders, we need to ask the questions. We kind of even need to get into, okay, personally, when I see somebody buy 5 bags of edibles, I'm like, what is your main purpose here? I just get into, what is your purpose here? If they're all THC, a lot of them will say, well, it's helping me sleep. Well, it's helping me, it's calming me down. And I'm like, well, why don't you consider using a little bit less THC and a more minor cannabinoids? So it's like directionally controlling them. And I let people know that, the more THC you use, the more THC you need. The minor cannabinoids don't have that same curve. So I'm always happy to help people use less THC.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think for me, when I get a zombie, it depends on really how I feel, but the energy that the zombie is giving me. Like if they just want a joint for the day, then I'm reaching for the most budget friendly and usually like a Gorilla Glue cross, because that's a right in the middle kind of experience, right? Those are a lot of the people. I just want a hybrid pre-roll, or I just want a sativa pre-roll. But if I see them over and over again and like they're pausing, they're maybe looking at everything in the store, that's my cue as a budtender. Go and spend time and talk to that person. And then I feel that it's built into like what I talk about with my business, but I preach intentional cannabis use. So my goal is to wake them up out of their zombiness. Like start making them question their experience that they're having when they're consuming the products. So, well, why do you use this? Like, when do you normally smoke? Is it getting what you want done? And when they start asking themselves that question and being forced to answer it to someone else, then they're like, oh, like, okay, I'm not sure. Maybe I haven't been doing this right, or I really like you. I'm going to come back and talk to you the next time when I have a little bit more time. So that's how you create those bonds where you have the repeat customer. And with intentional cannabis use, like you said, you had to start figuring out the strains. Like, I've spent the last probably 6 months working on a digital journal to just help people put that information down, because like I mean, I pay attention to everything I smoke, and then because I create content, I talk about it. it sticks in my brain, right? It's what I do every day. But these are people that are, it's like not what they do every day. It's a small fraction of what they do every day. So how are we going to track our cannabis use? How are we going to get information? And I figured, let's write it down.
Awesome. And that is fantastic advice. I remember for me, 2020, that summer was, I started, doing a journal. I had heard from somebody that they focused on one terpene a week. And so I was trying to get strains that were, so that I was smoked primarily, tried to stick with a terpene profile so that then I'd get really used to what that is and then move on. I did not stick with that level of specificity, but it was really helpful to start writing it down. And then, like you said, when that's what you do all the time, then the practice becomes a little bit more innate. And I don't write it down quite so often anymore because I know where to put it because I did start doing that process. So that brings me to my next question. A lot of research now is showing that consumers are finally becoming a little bit more sophisticated about knowing about the lesser cannabinoids and terpenes, at least what the word means, if not maybe even like some terpenes that they're looking for, as well as a clearer understanding that high THC isn't exactly where it's at. I know all three of us, because we've had these conversations, would attest to the fact that sometimes a 17% THC with the right terpene profile will knock you on your booty, and something that's testing at 28% maybe kind of mellow for the afternoon. You never know, right? Or if you're writing and journaling and keeping track, you will know. But what is your experience with consumers? How often are you still running into folks who are just looking for the highest THC? When you run into that, do you engage in education with them? What does the conversation look like? Curious how you handle that.
So when somebody talks high THC, I'll get them the high THC product if they're looking for something, but one of the things I've gotten to a point with on talking to people about directional control about their day, like about, shape shifting their day for whatever they want. There's ways of doing it, but we need to learn those things. But, when we start talking about terpenes, I work with people at the counter. I often ask them if they've heard of Leafly, if they've used Leafly. Once I get past the point of talking about journaling for them, then I'll just say, hey, head to Leafly. If you've got your favorite strains, and that's the other thing at the counter is that if somebody asks me for something indica leaning hybrid, sativa leaning hybrid, I'll say, what's your favorite strain? Or what are your, what do you like? And if we don't have that, then I'll try to hit it as close as I can to the target. Boy, the receptiveness of that, I think, is good to a point of talking to people about the terpenes and searching their terpenes on Leafly and getting products that are similar to what hit them the right way. If somebody really wants to engage on the THC level conversation, I go grab a nice gram of keef and I'll set it up there. I'm like, okay, this is your favorite strain of cannabis. It's not hitting you the same way. Add a little bit of this. Make your own level of high or low, which way you're going. You can tweak it a little bit, but you can't expect the flower to hit the same all the time from batch to batch. So that getting some of that understanding at the counter where then people have control if their flower side isn't hitting them the right way.
Interesting. Yeah, Lada.
I think we've got to address or address the fact that these THC chasers that come into shops was created by this industry. There's only two or three numbers that we legally have to put on the packaging. So the brands that go above and beyond by putting the terpene profile that's on there, thank you. But should that be standard? Yeah, because other states are already there and their consumers already know what terpene profile works for them. Because they see it all the time on the packaging, right? So one thing that they see on all packaging in this state is THC number. So that's what I'm looking for. Secondly, how do I address them? It depends on the age group of the THC chasers. Straight up, if you are above the age of 55, I'm just getting you what you want, because there is no amount of arguing that's going to make you think that, one, you already assume that I'm younger than I am based off of what I look like, right? So and they're going to say, well, it does matter, and then I don't want it to be a back and forth or argumentative thing. So I just try to, like, shorthand, like, sure, I'm happy to do that. But did you know the plant only produces about 30% THC anyway? And I just skip away with the fact, like leaving them sitting there thinking about it. Like, oh, so then how do they get this 40-something%? Like, how did they get to this number? And if they want to engage in the conversation when I come back with whatever product that they desire, sure. When I found when I say that little quick fact with the younger generation, they're like, no, I didn't know that. Tell me more. Like, well, then how did we get here? And that gives me an opportunity to explain extraction techniques and concentration of looking for THC. And then it also allows me to just say, at the end of the day, try it. Like, no one's going to be able to tell you how this is 100% going to impact you, but you. So let's just start here. And if this doesn't work, then we have a baseline of where we need to move to as a whole. And if you're looking at flower and you're chasing THC numbers, maybe you're looking at the wrong product. Let's maybe work on concentrates. Maybe you need a vape if you just want a high number, so it's all about that interaction. But is there a percentage that we're never going to be able to convert? Absolutely. They've been smoking weed longer than I've been alive, and that's what that's what they tell me. And so and I'm like, man, I bet you haven't sold it on this level yet, though. So give and take.
Yeah Interesting. Yeah. And when we talk to folks from other states, that the fact that the only number we really require on our packaging is that THC percentage is really frustrating. And so I'm curious, and that's frustrating to our producer processors here as well, right? Because one of the things Washington State has, we can't say we have a foothold in a lot of like awesome spaces or compared to other adult use states, but one of the things we do have is an extraordinary diversity of wonderful product. You'd be hard pressed to find, even California in terms of diversity can't match what we've got here in Washington State. So along those lines, as bud tenders, because I know we've got some producer processors watching, I'm kind of curious, what types of education do you find useful and beneficial from the actual brands themselves that help you talk about their product to consumers? Like, do vendor days help out? Does it matter, like the actual structure of the company? Do you like the narrative of who the people are that's growing the cannabis? Does that matter to you? Things like that.
To me, it matters as a consumer, not just as a bud tender. As a consumer, like, I know I like Washington Bud Co., but I love the people that work at Washington Bud Co. And that makes me, as a bud tender, easier to sell their product, right? Like, we try to act as if like bud tenders are unbiased in this industry, but no one is. And so having vendor days where you educate them on your product so that you can, even if it's something that you don't personally consume, you can tell them why this company does what they do and how they put things together, I found the most beneficial in selling products. Because like, I can pretty much at this point walk into any dispensary and sell weed simply because I know enough about the companies within like the producer processors that I'm just like, oh, okay, this separates this brand from that brand, even if they're in the same price point, and that gives me a talking point to my consumer. And it gives, like, I'm also in inventory, so it gives me an organization of inventory in my head. Like, they do living soil, they do hydroponics, they do this, and so that information isn't always on the package. And yeah, sometimes they put it on a paper write-up, but coming in, talking to the bud tenders, giving them tour opportunities, it makes it easier for them to sell your product.
Yeah. I find farm tours are one of my most favorite things to do. And yeah, it's a big deal. Goose, do you have something to add to that? that question?
Yeah, it pretty much on the same lines. When I'm talking to customers about companies that I'm familiar with, that I've been to their location, that I know what their processes are, and let's say how clean they are, it's a very comfortable conversation at the counter because I can get in there and just say, yeah, I trust every one of their products specifically. Let's say if it's on the flower side, everything about the flower is good. The inhale, the exhale, the terpenes, and to me, it's the terpenes that drive my experience because I think those terpenes just go right up there and start working it out. So if I can get a good company that has great terpene profiles on their flowers, it's fantastic. And the Washington Bud Company, when we went there, I've only been to, I think, a half a dozen, maybe 8 different farms. They had percentage wise the most clean plants overall of anybody. So, when I go into places, I look to see, okay, are there brown? Is there any browning on their plants? Do things look distressed in their plant rooms, in their especially in the flowering rooms? And when something's really clean looking, and they're using the right types of nourishment products, I feel comfortable selling products to anybody at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are getting close to the end of the hour, and I want to thank you both for making time today. I know, Lotta, you're going to go clock back in, so thank you very much for the generosity of your time today. I do want to bring up a couple of things. We have on Tuesday afternoons at 4 o'clock a happy hour, which I'm always delighted to chat with the two of you when you come, but anybody is welcome to come, and we talk about terpene profiles, consumption, if you're an enthusiast, it's a great place to come chat about everything. Recently, we have been talking a lot about the end of the world due to the AI takeover. So just be forewarned, it seems to be on everybody's mind. But we really do kind of cover the gamut there. Like I said, we have on Tuesday a Frisbee golf tournament. Everybody's going to be there that's here on this call. We'd love to see you come out and have a good time. And if you are a bud tender right now, membership with the Cannabis Alliance is free. Well, like I said, we are working on hopefully getting some of that education out there and the ability to start chatting with one another. It's not quite the same thing as a union, and we're not pretending to be that, but sometimes just community is helpful in making sure that everybody is kind of getting what they need and want out of their work experience. I had one last thing I was going to mention, and I can't quite remember what it is, but if I remember by the end of this. So before we go, though, I wanted to ask the two of you, is there anything that we haven't talked about, a thought that you have that you wish people knew about what it's like to bud tend, a direction you'd like to see this industry go in the future? Final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, right off the top of my head, things that I was talking about that folks don't understand behind the scenes. Yes, we're bud tenders, and yes, like we do more than that, but I had a customer come in that told me she opened the first dispensary on Vashon, and I just want to and then she left the industry because I always have conversations with people who say, oh, I was a bud tender once, and I say, well, why did you leave? Right? And she said, I left the industry because I realized that it was a low-wage retail job, and that hurt my feelings because I see this as way more than that, right? And so I'm urging our industry to find a way to support the individuals that come to want this be a career so that they don't end up having that feeling that this is low wage retail. Like, you should be able to make cost of living in this job and doing what you're doing because you're providing such a service. You're the labor. You're the actual person doing the transactions and keeping all of this running. And so I would like us to discuss as an industry of how we can shift our pay scales and our models to more support that, because we're already impacted, like you said, with not being able to get housing loans and all these other avenues. And man, if you didn't have a partner to help you with your financial support, making $16 an hour isn't really going to cut it. So that's just what I've seen. And as a bud tender, go to other dispensaries, not just to secret shop, but there are way more products than what your one store sells. And maybe you can better benefit your consumer by providing them a product that isn't here, but it does exist in the Washington market.
Yeah, fantastic advice. Yeah, it's even going outside of a 20-mile radius and you go into a store and it's completely different brands. It's fascinating. We've got a lot of good stuff here. Goose.
Ah, boy, you got me on this one. No, as far as you know, how we are as an industry, how we are as bud tenders. Yeah, it's right. It is not great financial pay, but I do feel that the amount that we're able to help customers out into their wellness in life is, you know, it's cliche, but it's payment on its own. I feel that I get benefit out of helping people out, especially when they come back to the counter and whatever they've been searching for, you've hit that sweet zone with them. They're doing their journaling, they're continue on their process to wellness. And that's kind of what I enjoy most about the industry right now.
Yeah, which is lovely. And I will say, because the union I was a part of was the teachers union in my previous life when I was a teacher. And I think the same is true there is here, you know, when you're doing something that feels like a calling, you do get payment in your soul. However, you do also need like actual payment. You both can go hand in hand, right? It's not a one for the other situation. So I want to, again, thank you both very much. I did remember what that other thing was, and that is we also have a series that will start to come out on shorts on Instagram Reels as well as TikTok, Nugs of Knowledge. And Goose is our first bud tender. Lotto, we got to talk soon because I would love to invite you as well. And it's a series that will continue on just information about the cannabis plant and some of these conversations a little bit more in depth that you have with consumers. So keep an eye out for those nugs of knowledge as they come out. Here at the Cannabis Alliance, we are dedicated to the advancement of a vital, ethical, equitable, and sustainable cannabis industry. Again, thank you both.
Bye, y'all.